Hey guys, this is part 2 of my pros and cons digital nomad lifestyle video. So if you haven't caught part 1, which is all the exciting pro stuff, positive things to being a nomad, you can either stop now, go watch it, or you can watch it right after watching this video. But yes, today I'm going to cover the 6 cons or not so nice things to being a digital nomad. So let's jump right in. Okay, so now we talked about all the really fun, exciting things that you get out of nomading, but let's talk about some of the things that are a bit more challenging and maybe aren't discussed as much with people who aren't in the community. I would think nomads themselves, we are all aware of these things and we do actually have these conversations amongst ourselves, but I don't know that they're really shared online quite as much. So the first one is that honestly, dating is really hard. I get this question a lot about what is dating like? How do you do that? How do you meet people? All the things. And I think dating is hard in general. I don't care where you live or, if you stayed in one city your whole life, dating is always a challenge. But when you add moving around constantly into that equation, and then if you're in countries where you don't speak the language, then your pool of possibilities becomes even smaller. So it can be really challenging. Dating apps are great for traveling. I personally like to use Hinge. That's the one I'm usually on. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's just a reality. It's not impossible. I actually know quite a few people who have met traveling and nomading and are still together. But a lot of relationships would say happen very quickly and are very intense, and then they, after a few weeks or maybe a couple months, they kind of go their separate ways. So that's kind of been my experience, and that's partly just because, again, priorities. You have to find someone who wants to live the same lifestyle as you at the same time and who is kind of going in the same direction geographically that you're headed. And point number 2, which is kind of similar to dating, is just keeping relationships in general. So when you are spread around the world with your friends or your family, or even your friends and family back home, it takes a lot of effort to maintain those relationships. You don't have the ability to be hey, I'm free Thursday night, want to go grab dinner, and just catch up. You kind of have to schedule Zoom calls and time zones and keep up with them more intentionally. So I know some people who are really, really good at that, and it is definitely possible, but you might find that some of your relationships might be a little bit surface level, and then the really close ones you have back home, you may not talk to those people quite as much, and in the end, you might lose some relationships or friendships as well. So a third negative is that sometimes, actually a lot of times, because you are traveling, we already talked about the growth that you go through, you're growing in a different way that your friends and family back home are, and they don't necessarily always get to see that growth. They may fully support you and love you, but unlike living at home and living in the same place and doing the same activities with your friends or family, you're now doing them on your own or with other people. So you're growing in ways that they're not. So sometimes there can be a disconnect between you and your friends and family back home because you're growing in ways that they just aren't, or that they're not able to fully experience and see. And so this actually brings me to my next point as well, is that going back home can be really challenging because you've gone through this growth phase, because you've learned so much about yourself, and you kind of go home and things maybe aren't different, or you feel a little bit of tension because you had such an amazing time while you were traveling or nomading, or you just feel more in tune with who you were as a nomad than you do with the person that you are when you are home. So that's just something to be aware of, and something that happens, and it's not bad, it's totally natural, but it is something that I think people do experience. So let's talk about loneliness for a little bit, because after dating, this is probably the second most common question I get, which is, don't you get lonely? Isn't being a nomad and traveling lonely? And I think it really just goes to your personality and how much you actually like to be around people. So I'm definitely an introvert, which maybe not realize it because I have a YouTube channel, but I'm definitely an introvert. And I definitely travel and don't necessarily always meet people because I don't want to. I kind of like this solo life. Now I'm with Hacker Paradise, and so I'm surrounded by people all the time. And I also love that, and that's okay. But I would say as far as like being lonely there, yes, the answer is yes. There are definitely times where I've felt lonely or alone and didn't really know how to meet people or what to do or how to just, you know, walk up to somebody and just like have a conversation, which is really all I wanted. But I think going back to priorities, like it's never long-term, that like loneliness, it's always very short-term. And the pros for me outweigh the sometimes feelings of loneliness. So, and this is my personal experience, there are probably definitely people who experience bigger and longer bouts of loneliness. So I think you just, again, have to like learn who you are and learn what's best for you and learn how you can manage those feelings while also, you know, being a nomad or traveling. And maybe that means that your travel looks different. Maybe you have a home base and you just travel 3 to 6 months out of the year. Maybe you're not a full-time nomad. I always say there's no right or wrong way to be a nomad. There's just the way that works for you. So don't be afraid to try something, or if something doesn't work, try something different and see if you can find something that actually works for you. And the last point is that sometimes traveling, you get less home comforts. So right now I'm in like a really nice apartment here in Colombia, and I have a lot of videos on traveling via house sitting, which is what I did for like 2.5 years. So I was always able to get those home comforts no matter where I was. But that's not always the case. And you also learn in different countries, there's different levels of like expectations. So a lot of places, the hot water lasts like 2 minutes. So like taking a long hot shower is like not a thing. You just gotta like get in, get out, right? Some places, you know, when I was in Kenya, it was like cold showers only. That's it. And I think that was the place we were staying at specifically, not like all of the country, but it's just, there are things about home comforts that you need to know what you are willing to give up and what you're willing to sort of live with for the short term to have the experiences and the growth, whatever that you're actually wanting to see. So you kind of have to give those things up a little bit, not always. But if you really, really want your same home comforts all the time, that is going to be a challenge. Okay, so there you have it. There are my 6, you know, cons to being a digital nomad, taking off the rose-colored glasses a little bit, talking a little bit more real about what you might experience. I hope you found that helpful. Again, if you haven't watched part 1, which is all the pros to being a nomad, you can click the link right now in this video and go check it out. Thank you for being here. It really means a lot to me that you guys subscribe and you watch my videos. I am Traveling Tayler, and you can also find me on Instagram at Traveling Tayler. That is traveling with 1 L and Taylor with an ER. And yeah, follow me on Instagram, send me your DMs. I love answering questions. And if you want to know any more about this lifestyle, let me know. I will see you guys next week.